the objective of this particular unit or this particular topic is to expose you to the various research elements. When you talk about elements, these are concepts, these are things, or these are actually principles that you must be able to understand them. Again, your knowledge of these particular elements will help you both to assess social science research and, more importantly, to enable you determine and explain these elements in your own research. So it will help you, because we said at the end of this particular unit, you'll be able to do what? You'll be able to do a particular research. You'll be able to do a particular research. Of course, this one will be based on your area of specialization. Those doing broadcast will do a particular research based on broadcast. Those who will be doing a print will do a particular research based on print. So therefore, at the end of this particular unit or this particular topic, you'll be able to learn more elements so that they'll be able to help you even in understanding what you are writing as a student. So by the time you are through with this particular unit, you should also be able to define and explain the following concepts. You'll be able to define and explain the following concepts. Number one, you'll be able to define what a research question is. Forget about the first two, concepts and constructs. You'll be able to define what a research question is. At the end of this particular unit, you'll also be able to define what a hypothesis is. You'll be able to define what research instruments are. It's quite a topic. It's actually a very long topic, but I expect you to be what? To be punctual, and also I expect you to be writing something. Be writing something. Ukuwe na kadayari mahali unaandika what you are understanding, because I'll be asking questions as we proceed, or as we proceed and as we start with this at this particular juncture. So nina expect ya kwamba nitakuuliza maswali fulani na ninajua I hope that you have a diary there that you're jotting out some points that you are going to write, because what I have shared here, I'm also going to be deleting it. I don't want it to be so long, so I'll be deleting it and adding more information. So the first concept, we call it a problem statement. The first concept is problem statement. Let me post it there so that all of us can see. So the first concept that you're going to do to know or to learn is what we call a problem statement. Now, as far as research is concerned, you will be able, when you be doing your research, you'll come across this particular thing or this particular topic, this particular subtopic or this particular element, and you'll be expected to write about it. So when you talk about a problem statement, it's actually a precise formulation of the problem to be investigated. So when you talk about a problem statement, it is a formulation of the problem to be investigated. It's actually a definition of what the investigator proposed to do. It is a statement that should and therefore bring into being what is called the distinct image of the problem to be investigated. Therefore, when you're writing this particular statement, you should clearly indicate to the reader what the researcher has in mind, or what you have in mind. You are the researcher, so you should be able to clearly indicate it to the reader what you have in mind. It is a statement of the problem which logically follows from the background and could range from one or more paragraph to one to several, so it can be of one paragraph, it can be of maybe 3 lines, and so on and so forth. So it is a statement that shows a precise formulation of the problem to be investigated. Remember, research is a problem. Remember when we were doing when we were defining a research. We said that a research is to investigate again and again, is to actually find out again and again. Why are you finding out? We are finding out because there is a problem at hand. Like when you talk about coronavirus, the researchers are working so hard to get the vaccine to this particular disease, and therefore they are investigating. They are doing it again and again until they get the right medicine or the right cure to this particular disease. Therefore, that is a problem. Remember also what we said last week. We said that when you are doing a research and the answer that you're going to get after you do the research is going to not to help anybody, then whatever you are doing as research is not important. So whenever you are doing a research, the answer that you are going to get at the end of the research, or the findings that you're going to get at the end of the research, must be of help to someone, to a group of people, to an institution, or even to an organization, or even to a country, to a country at large, or maybe the world. So that is it. So that is a problem statement. Then we come to the next variable. And the next variable that I'm going to put there, no, the next element that I'm going to put there is what we call a variable. A variable is simply something, or actually we can say it is what I'm unable to put it, but a variable is any entity that can take on different values. Maybe I can put it like that. Any entity that can take on different values. Like age is a variable. When you talk about kilogram is a variable. When you talk about sex is a variable, gender is a variable. So it is an entity that can actually take any different value. And there are several ways of looking at the concept of variable. So sometimes science or scientists use experiments to search for causes and effects and relationship in nature. In other words, they design an experiment so that changes to one item causes something else to vary in a predictable way. So what we are saying is that sometimes you can use one variable so that you can see the effect. I mean, you can, like, for example, you are saying one variable can cause an effect in another variable. For example, the age can cause an effect maybe on the consumption of food or the kilograms. Maybe let's say, for example, let's say we have got kilograms of maize, and we have the age group. You come to realize that it comes to a certain age, people eat a lot. So you come to say that the age, people of the age between A to B, they eat 5 kilograms of maize every day. And people between the age of C and D eat maybe 2 kilograms. So you see, because of the age, the kilograms of the consumption of maize, actually you find that the consumption of maize goes up or goes down because of the age. So we are saying that when one variable changes, it can also make another variable to change. Unless there is a question. Agnes, do we have a question?
No, I don't have.
What have you understood about a variable?
I've understood that a variable is any entity that can take any different value.
Good. That's very good. Esther, what have you understood about a variable? Esther, are you here? Esther? Agnes?
Yes.
What is a variable?
A variable is any entity that can take any different value.
For example, give us an example of a variable.
I don't have an example.
An example is age. Another example is kilograms. Another example is the size of the size of the shoe that you wear, the number of the shoe that you wear, the weight, etc. Those are variables. They can take different values for different people. For example, age can take different values for different people. A country can be considered as a variable because also a country can be considered as a variable. Why? Because a person's country can be assigned a value. Like you can assign Kenya a value like 3. Even in this particular country of ours, counties are considered as variables because every county has got a number. Like Nairobi is county number 47. Mombasa is county number 001. So those are variables. A variable also can be described as a concept or construct. It can be described as a concept or construct that can vary or has more than one value. For example, gender is a construct that is a concept or construct that can vary. We have various, we have two types. Maybe you can be a male or a female. That dictates what type of a gender you are. Weight also, the shoe size also. Others can be considerably more abstract or vague. Other variables can be vague. For example, sense of well-being. You see, you cannot say he's 5 kilograms. The sense of his well-being is 5 kilograms. These are vague. When you talk about vague, these are things that cannot be measured. These are things that cannot actually be seen. Like, for example, when you talk about self-esteem, when you talk about strength of belief of religion, you cannot, Agnes, you cannot tell Khalid that Khalid, you believe more in your religion, or I believe more in my religion than you. What shows that? You see, going to church daily does not mean that, Agnes, you are more religious than Khalid. That's what we are saying. So it is very difficult for you to measure that. It's very difficult to measure how religious you are, how religious you are. Also, it is very difficult to measure IQ. How intelligent someone is. You cannot say that this one is more intelligent than the others unless you come up with a scale. And that's why you come to realize that whenever we come to actually saying that this person is clever than the other, we base that by giving maybe quizzes. We give quizzes, and the person who performs better or maybe gets more marks is the one that we actually say this one is more brighter than the other one, which is not right. It's very difficult to measure how intelligent a person is or how stupid a person is That one is very difficult, even though an IQ is a variable. Any question? What is the opposite of a variable? Joseph, you've just joined us. Joseph Otieno Owori. Joseph, can you hear me? Joseph cannot hear me. Deborah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So what is the difference? Or what is the opposite? No, not the difference, but what is the opposite of a variable?
The opposite is a constant.
It's a constant.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, when you talk about a variable is anything that can vary. So a constant is the opposite of a variable. So we usually have a constant. Like what can you consider a constant? Derek or Jassy, I can see you and you have not muted your microphone. Derek. Derek doesn't want to talk. Waithaka Wanjiko. Waithaka, you don't want to talk. Esther. Esther. Hawa watu wananisikia kweli? Si hata afadhali useme hujui, we continue instead of wasting our time. Agnes,
Yes.
what we have said that a variable is something that constantly changes. Now, the opposite of a variable is a common or a constant. Can you give us an example of a constant? Something that does not change.
I think an example of a constant is like some, a few.
We are not doing English. We are doing communication research methodology. So we are looking at a constant, something that cannot change. It remains the way it is. We cannot say that tomorrow it will increase, tomorrow it will be, I mean, today it was not as much as yesterday, something like that. John Mutinda. So anyway, when you talk about a constant, so you can decide to keep quiet. Those people that I'm calling and hamutaki kuongea, you actually, that is very bad. Mahali yuko, wewe jua tu hausomi. Joseph, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to John Mutinda. When I ask you a question and you're not answering, wewe jua tu hausomi. Wewe ni kama tu unasikiza music mahali yuko. You just know that.
Mwalimu, I had an itch on my communication, so I've just rectified right now.
Yeah, you should keep it constant. You should keep it constant, otherwise you're going to lose a lot. So those people that I'm asking questions and you keep quiet wherever you are, I know you can hear me. Just know that that is a very bad gesture, and what you're doing, you are not learning. What you're doing is like you are listening to music at home. So learning is all about interactivity. You have to interact, ask a question, answer the question. If you don't know, you say you don't know so that we explain. Joseph, you can put off your microphone, please. So mahali huko unaulizwa swali unanyamaza tu. That is very bad. That is very bad. Anyway, let's continue. So we have said that the opposite of a constant, the opposite of a variable is a constant. And there are several things.
You are now unmuted.
So there are several things that can occur, and there are several things that are constant, that these things cannot change. A very good example is death. Death is a constant. Whether you died by fire, whether you died by coronavirus, whether you died, it doesn't matter how you died. Death remains to be constant. So if death is constant, then life is also constant. Life does not change. Whether you live in Runda, whether you live in Kayole, and whether you live in Modaiga, your life is your life. It does not change. We cannot say you have 7 lives or you have 10 lives with you. No, life is life, just like death. Death does not change. So death is constant. So it doesn't matter how you died. Unless there is a question there, maybe you have a concern. So because we don't have a concern, we have looked at a variable.
What are the examples of variables like?
I've given examples of variables, Joseph. Maybe we can ask Deborah. Deborah, what are examples of variables?
Age,
Now unmuted.
sex.
Just repeat what you are saying.
I'm going to give the examples of variables, sir.
There's age, there's weight, and sex or gender.
Joseph, I believe you have been answered.
Yeah, have been answered.
So what has she said?
I've had age. I got one only. I just had one. Maybe you can do research on the other ones.
Deborah, can you repeat again?
Said age, weight, sex or gender.
She has said age, weight, sex, or gender.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? John Mutinda.
You are now unmuted.
Do you have any question?
No, sir.
You don't have a question.
So
then let's continue. And the best thing, maybe when you speak, you can switch off your microphone, because when I speak, I also hear some echoes, and I believe this is happening to all of us. So when you speak, when you're given a chance to speak, immediately you're done speaking, switch off the microphone. So let's continue. So we have said a constant. The opposite of a variable is a constant, and a constant has one attribute or category. That is, it does not change in value. A good example is death. So death is a constant for all human beings. However, the cause of death are variables. You see, death is a constant for all human beings. However, the cause of death they are variables. Like suicide is a variable. Illness is a variable. Road accident is a variable. But death is a constant. But the cause of the death, these are called the variables. So the way this person died is a variable. Maybe you died by fire. So death by fire, fire is a variable. Maybe you died by coronavirus. Coronavirus is a variable. But now you dying, or that particular thing we call death, is a constant. That particular thing we call life is a constant. It doesn't matter whether you such kind of things. So variables can be classified into various categories. Variables can be classified into various categories. And we are going to classify the variables I'm going to share with you there. So variable can be classified as one independent variable. So when we talk about an independent variable, these variables are actually classified in terms of their relationship with one another. These variables, or variables in general, are classified in terms of their relationship with one another. So there is always what we call a relationship between variables. Researchers usually talk about independent and dependent variables. So when you're doing a research, we usually talk about independent and dependent variables. So there is the most important and useful way to categorize variables is as independent and dependent. And according to this categorization, you come to realize let's, for example, talk about the dependent variable, then we are going to talk much about it. So when you talk about the dependent variables, let's start with the independent variable. An independent variable is the presumed cause of the dependent variable. So it is the assumed cause of the dependent variable. So the independent variable is the presumed cause of the dependent variable. So an independent variable is the one that can stand on its own. It doesn't change. It is constant. Remember, we have said that variables, the opposite of a variable is a constant. Now here we are talking about now the variable, independent and dependent. An independent variable does not change. The only thing that changes is the dependent variables, because they depend on the independent variables. So the independent variables is, sometimes you can call them the antecedent, while the dependent variable is the consequent. Consequent meaning that they are the consequences of the dependent variable. Unless there is a question there. Anybody with a question? So another way of distinguishing independent variable from the dependent variable is independent variable is observed and its value presumed to depend on the effect of the dependent variable. I'm repeating that an independent variable is observed and its value presumed to depend on the effects of the dependent variable. Its value presumed to be to depend on the effects of the dependent variable. So in other words, we are saying that the dependent variable is what the researcher wishes to explain. The dependent variable is what the researcher wishes to explain. So I'm going to share something there so that we can read and so that we can understand more about what we call the independent variables. So I'm sharing something here. So you are given an example here, and you are told, consider this example. Consider this example. I hope we can all see that. Assume that a researcher is interested in determining how the newscaster modes of dressing affect an audience perception of the credibility of television station or TV station. So you're told two different modes of dressing, that is native stroke English, are selected from an investigation. So two different modes of dressing, that is native stroke English, are selected from the investigation. Respondents are randomly assigned. So the respondents are actually assigned to view two newscasters, one in African attire and the other one in a suit. They are then asked to complete questionnaires that measures credibility. So they are then asked to actually complete what is called a questionnaire. A questionnaire is simply a list of questions that an interviewee or an interviewer asks the interviewee to fill them or to answer them in his research. So in this study, experiment, in this study, that is the experiment, the mode of dressing is the independent variable. The mode of dressing is the independent variable. Why is it an independent variable? Remember we said the independent variable does not change. It's only the dependent variables that changes. So its values as in this study experiment, the mode of dressing is the independent variable. Its values are systematically varied by the researcher who selected only two modes of dressing and suit. Then we are saying the dependent variable to be measured is the perceived credibility of television stations. I don't know whether we have understood that particular statement.
Mwalimu, kindly pardon. I've been receiving a call. How I wish you pardon a bit.
What do you mean, pardon?
Haven't got the difference that you're talking about the questionnaire, how it came about, because I was receiving a call.
Now, Joseph, let me tell you one thing.
Yeah.
Be able to manage yourself properly, because you cannot be in a class and at the same time you're receiving calls, because we will keep on going back, and we will never finish. So next time, manage yourself properly, in such a way that you are not disturbed from maybe being in class, because this is actually class. This is class. As far as you are home, you're supposed to be in class.
Yeah. Okay.
Now assume that I'm the one picking calls. What will happen?
The class won't go on.
Yeah, the same case. You are taking us back. We are trying to go ahead. You're taking us back. So we have said that an independent variable is a variable that stands on its own. And dependent variables, they are what we call, the dependent variables are what we call, we named them, we called them, the dependent variable, we called them the consequent. And the independent variable, we called them the antecedent. Why do we call the dependent variable the consequent? because they are the what we call another name of the consequent is the result, or the resultant, or the consequential, or following, something like that. So it is the consequent, while the independent variable is the antecedent. Now, for us to understand between these two, I've given an example there, and I've said, assume that a researcher is interested in determining how the newscaster, a newscaster is a person reading the news for us or presenting the news for us on TV. It can, actually, at this point, we are talking about on TV. Now, this person is interested, this researcher is interested in determining how the newscaster's mode of dressing actually affects the audience's perception of the credibility of a TV station. Like when you watch Citizen and somebody is wearing African dress or African suits, and that is, let's say, for example, Citizen, and in another TV station, say Nation, you see the newscasters, they are wearing official clothes. Does that one affect the credibility of news that you get? Now, this researcher is doing this particular research. So two different modes of dressing are selected. That is the native and the English. Native is maybe African dress, or maybe African dress, or African, let's just call it African dress. English is the suits, the skirts, and the skirt suits, etc., etc. So respondents actually are randomly selected, or they are selected to view the newscasters in one TV station, whereby they are wearing what we call African attires, and other respondents are assigned to view another TV station where the newscasters are wearing suits. At the end of watching the news, they are then asked to complete a questionnaire. A questionnaire simply is a set of questions that are written down, and this set of questions are written down by the researcher, and they are taken to the respondents. The respondents are the interviewee. Interviewees are the respondents. So after watching what we call this type of news, these groups have watched a particular TV station whereby these guys are wearing African attire, and a particular group has been assigned to watch a TV news with a group of people wearing what we call English attire. These, I mean, the suits, etc. So then, after watching, they are given what we call a questionnaire to fill in. So in this study, or this experiment, the mode of dressing is the independent variable. So the mode of dressing does not change. It remains like that. For example, the mode of dressing for that one particular group is a native African dress. So it does not change. It remains like that. And for the other is English attire, or English attire. Let me just call it like that. So therefore, because the mode of dressing does not change, we call it the independent variable. So that variable will not change. So its values are systematically varied by the researcher who selected only two modes of dressing, African attire and suit. So the dependent variable to be measured is the perceived credibility of television station. So the perceived credibility is actually the dependent variable, because it depends on how people have, or what kind of clothes these people have worn. So if you have worn what we call the African attire, then the perceived credibility changes. The perceived credibility changes. If you have worn the English attire, then also the perceived credibility changes. So therefore, we can say the perceived credibility of the television station is what we call the dependent variables. So that is a practical example of you understanding what an independent and a dependent variable is. And
You are now unmuted.
I have a question,
Khalid, I'm
sir.
asking whether you have a
Khalid,
question.
I'm asking whether you have a question.
I have a question.
Yes,
Yes,
Mutinda.
Mutinda.
Khalid, wait a minute. You have
Khalid, wait a
Mutinda
minute. You have a Mutinda translation.
Sir, I don't have questions.
Sir, I don't have question.
Khalid, you don't have a
Khalid,
question?
you don't have a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, meaning you have a question
Yes,
or you
meaning you
don't
have a
have.
question or you don't have.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, John.
Yes, John.
I'm asking in an experiment about the effects of nutrients on a crop.
Mm-hmm.
Now talk about the independent variables and independent variables in the effects of nutrients on crops. For example, if in the independent variables, the amount of nutrients added to the crop field and the output you get from the crops.
So you're talking about
So you're talking about the amount of nutrients.
Yes.
I think we have a problem.
I think we have a problem here because
I'm not hearing you properly.
I'm not hearing you properly.
That is what we call echo.
That is what we call echoes, huh?
Yeah. So
I don't know you have
I don't know you have echoes on your side.
Mutinda.
Mutinda.
Yes, sir.
Do you have echoes on
Do
your
you
side?
have echoes on your side? Because I
no.
Hey.
Sir, the echoes are coming from
the echoes are coming from
you.
Very
difficult because hearing our echoes. I speak.
Can you repeat your question?
Can you repeat your question, please?
I was talking about an experiment about the effects of nutrients on crops.
Effects of nutrients on crops.
Of nutrients on crops.
Yeah. Now, if the amount of nutrients added and the biomass or the results you get from the crops after you harvest, which is independent and which is independent variable there.
You see, number one,
you have to talk about the crops.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the crops, do not change.
The crops do not change.
Yes.
So they remain the way
they are.
Yes.
So what changes?
Yeah.
Is the nutrients. So therefore, the crops are independent. And the nutrients are the
dependent variables.
Okay.
Any other question from anybody? So I hope, Femi, have you understood that particular example?
Not so much. I'm having a problem of bundles, but I'll just get it. So inapotea nikikuja kuja. Yeah. But I will catch up. I'll listen to the recordings.
Agnes, do you have a question on this particular example?
No, I don't.
What have you understood about it?
I've understood that the nutrients.
Not nutrients. We are talking about this example that I've given, a simple, a practical example about how you should, or a practical example of the difference between independent and dependent variables.
The one about attires.
Yes.
That one I've understood.
Can you explain to us what you have understood?
I've understood that the attire that the attire does not change, so it is independent. While the anchor or the news newscaster changes, so it's dependent. And also the attire depends on the attire. The anchor is dependent on the attire.
The anchor is dependent on the attire.
Yes.
Agnes, you are confusing us. What we are looking at, Agnes, in this particular example, we are looking at the credibility of news. That when you watch a certain news, let's say, for example, we have Nation and we have Citizen. Maybe Citizen, the newscasters are wearing the native clothes, the African dress, or the African attire. And in Nation, they are wearing suits and skirt suits. And they are giving us news, all of them. So we are looking at these people the way they are dressed and the credibility of news. Does it change? Credibility means the credibility to be trusted, the news to be trusted. Credibility is that particular news, can it be trusted? So the trustworthy of that news, of the news that is given by people wearing African attire, and the trustworthiness of the people of the news being given by people wearing the English dress or the suits, does it change?
I think according to me, yes.
Ni kwa mfano nasema hivi, tuseme mtu akwambie, okay, I'm giving an example ya Kiswahili tu, acha ni just allow me to use Kiswahili. Let's say for example, and mute. Somebody is muting me. Let me demote all of you to viewers. Now it's like saying this. Tuseme kwa mfano Agnes, mtu akuja amevalia suti. Akwambie kwa mfano ninauza shamba fulani na ninaiuza 1.5 million. Na mwingine akuja amevalia tu nguo za Kiafrika tu. Okay, si mchafu lakini amevalia tu nguo tu is. Akwambie hiyo plot ni yangu. Na yule mwenye amevaa suti bado nakwambia hiyo plot ni yangu na ninaiuza. So all of them are selling this plot. Who are you going to trust? Agnes.
I will trust the one in a suit.
Yes, the same case with the person giving you information and is wearing what we call a suit is more credible than the person giving you information and is wearing the African attire. Now that is according to you. According to another person, he may say that the person wearing African attire is more trustworthy than the person wearing a suit. So the decisions vary. So what we are calling the independent variables, the dependent variables. The dependent variables are the credibility issues. But when it comes to the African dresses, they remains to be independent. They don't change because it doesn't change, but the credibility issues are the one that actually changes. So having said that, let me move to the next thing. And the next thing that I'm going to look at, we are going to look at something called research questions or hypotheses. Research questions or hypotheses. Remember when we are introducing this particular unit, we went through the course outline and I was able to actually tell you the difference between a research. No, we only talked about the hypotheses. But today now we are looking at them. So what is a hypothesis? First of all, a hypothesis is a prediction. Or scientifically, we can say this is an educated guess concerning the outcome of a research. It is an educated guess. It is an assumption, an educated guess. So a hypothesis can also be defined as a set of assumptions, speculation, which is tentatively accepted as the basis for an investigation. Like if you're going to conduct a research, let's say, for example, I'm conducting a research about this particular class. First of all, I need to have my assumption. I need to know why a lot of you are not in this class. Maybe I'm investigating the reason why students are on and off, or students do not attend media communication research methodology class. Maybe I'm investigating that. Before I investigate, there are what we call assumptions that usually, I must have assumptions. And one of the assumptions, I would say, the students do not have data bundles. Students are not interested. Students do not have phones or the gadgets to support them on e-learning. So those are my assumptions. So those ones are the basis of my research. So I want to investigate to prove either my assumptions to be right or wrong. So I will carry out what we call a research. So that is called research questions. Now that one is called research hypothesis. Now research hypothesis, once you formulate hypothesis, the next thing that you do, you formulate research questions. Is there any question? Do you have any question? So therefore, we can have, so I have defined what we call a hypothesis. We can define what we call a research question. A research question is stated as a question that explores the relationship between two or more variables. It is stated as a question that explores the relationship between two or more variables. Kuna swali hapo? Do we have a question there? We don't have a question, we go to research objective. Research objectives are mainly the aims of a research. That is the reason why you are conducting your research. They are usually called research objectives. They are described as the expectations or the contribution or outcome arising from the study. So these are described as the expectations or contributions or outcomes arising from the study. Remember, when you're conducting your research, you usually have what we call research objectives. So I will stop there. That is the end of that particular topic, unless there is a question, John. Unless there is a question, Halid. Kuna swali? If we do not have a question, then I can only remind you one thing.
You are now unmuted.
I have a question, sir.
Yeah, John.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, John.
Can we say hypothesis is something more than a wild guess, but less than a well-established theory? Can you hear me?
You are now unmuted.
John, can you
unmuted? You are now unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I want to define a hypothesis. You tell me if it's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Is something more than a wild guess, but less than a well-established theory.
When you talk about
When you talk about a
hypothesis has been defined
hypothesis has been defined by various scholars.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you must understand about a hypothesis is that a hypothesis is an educated guess.
Yes.
And hypothesis and theory, they have what we call a good relationship.
Yes.
So according to me, it's a trial. It's a good trial. It's a good trial.
If
you define to me,
what a hypothesis is, the way you have defined it.
The question was out of 5 marks.
I'll give you 4 out of 5.
But you need to explain more.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question from anybody? Agnes, do you have a question?
I don't.
You don't have?
Yes, but I would like to probably.
Agnes, hata usikiki vizuri, unakatika katika. Agnes, tuonane siku ingine, wewe usikiki vizuri. Deborah, do you have a question?
I have the last question.
You have another question, John?
Yeah, in this class, are we going to talk about the types of hypotheses?
Agnes is trying to speak.
Yeah, it's trying to speak, but it depends on the way.
Good. Then John, you can ask
your question.
I'm asking if in this particular class, are we going to talk about the types of hypotheses?
The type of hypothesis we are not going to talk about them because I believe that you are in your own semester. When it comes to types of hypothesis, okay, we might look at the type of hypothesis because they are around 4 hypotheses. Actually, 3. We have null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. So we are going to look at hypothesis. In detail. Maybe okay. The unit will not end before the type of But at this particular juncture, or as far as this topic is concerned, we will not look at the types of reports.
We will not look at the types of reports.
Yeah. Thanks.
Derek Ojasi, do you have any question? So remain the way you are. I want to take the register. I cannot remember all of you, so remain the way you are. Nichukue register, then we can call it a day. The recording, you will get it immediately after we are done with the class. So one thing I was reminding you is that next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, there is what we call a cut. You're supposed to do a cut. This cut will not be marked. It will be marked by the system, but you're supposed to do this particular cut. And this cut is just for piloting purposes. It's not going to affect your other cuts or anything. You just do the cut, and after you do the cut, that is it. So utafanya hiyo cut. Ukishafanya hiyo cut, a timetable will be prepared for this particular cut. I believe the HOD will be able to guide you. And what we are going to do, as far as let's say for example communication research is concerned, wewe utaenda uangalie timetable, ile time inafaa ikue, and then you will log in into your system. You will find that cut. Do that particular cut. Okay, it is not going to, we are not going to use the results. It's for piloting purposes. For piloting purposes, because come at the end of the semester, you'll be expected to do an exam. So tunafanya kitu inaitwa testing. We are testing the system. We are testing the system whether it will be able or it will be enough for you to actually do what? Do the exam. So by testing the system, we are going to have a cut that will be done. So hii cut hatutaihesabu mahali popote, ni cut tu ya kutest system kama inaweza accommodate wanafunzi na the challenges zenye zitatokea as far as you be doing your exam. So it is always good that all of you participate in this particular what we call in this particular cut. As we speak right now, mine is already set for this particular unit. So it is only remaining that particular time ambayo utakuja ufanye hiyo cut. Ukishafanya hiyo cut, timetable itaprovidiwa. So unafaa kufuata timetable. Kama unafaa kufanya communication, hii particular unit unafaa kuifanya tuseme saa 8. So utalogin kwa system saa 8, maybe on Tuesday, ukuje uifanye. Ukishafanya unawacha, una submit. Unless kuna swali hapo.
Unless kuna swali hapo.
Unless you have a question there.
Unmuted.
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Where are we going to get the timetable, please?
The timetable will be.
The timetable
will be actually
given out in due course.
To be given out in due course. Or even on Monday.
There is somebody who works from the timetable.
Okay.
Swali ingine.
You are now muted. You are now muted.
Are we using the same exam browser?
Using the same exam what?
The same exam browser to do the cut.
No, you're not going to use the same exam browser because we believe that some students don't have the computers. They are using phones.
Okay.
The phone, the exam browser only accommodates machines, not accommodates laptops and computers, not phones. Any other question?
You are now muted.
Sir, on that point there, the exam which we are about to do, are we going to do it with our phones in this site?
Yes, you'll be doing it in
Yes,
this
you'll be doing it in this
and
site,
you're going to use
and
only
you're going
the
to
gadgets
use
that
only
you have.
the gadgets that you have.
Okay.
Any other question? Na wengine hawaulizi maswali. Alafu ikifika hiyo siku unasema sioni hii, sioni hii. Agnes. Agnes, any question?
Swali.
Hakuna swali.
I don't have any question.
That is nice. Derek haongei. So I'm wondering whether he's
I don't have a question. Everything has been answered.
everything is okay. So I don't want you to log out. Remain logged in so that I can take the register and then we can call it a day. So don't log out because I cannot remember all your names. I want to look at your names and tick the register, then we can call it a day. Kuna wale wametoka, so sikumbuki ni akina nani, akina Rush, this guy called who? Halid ametoka.